I'm not kidding. They want me to come to the Christmas party.
They are Facebook.
Uh-huh.
Good morning. This is December the 17th, and we are in the Richland County Board of Commissioners are in session. Commissioners Banks, Mears, and Vero are here. Stacy Crawl, our clerk, Andrew Keller, our administrator, and we've been joined by Miles Parsons, who's going from Wayfinders, who's going to present us, make a presentation. Here is Carl Hunnell from Richland Source. Anybody online? Okay, well, Miles, we want to have you present to us what
Sure.
you have in mind here.
Very good. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to be here. Unfortunately for you all, I think some of you have heard my rambling past, but I'll better breeze through it and leave some time for questions. So again, just want to take maybe 10, 15 minutes to kind of give you a brief overview of the program, the project at hand, and then again, some time for questions. I'm not sure who'll be advancing the slides.
I am.
Okay, go ahead. So the building that we are currently in opened in 1990s. You can see there it started as the Mansfield Richland Morrow Total Operation Poverty. Not in this current building, over on Fifth Street. Started serving just 18 women and children only, no men, which is a little bit unusual compared to where we're at today. The current building was donated in 1995 through the Richland County Foundation. They spent about 2.5, 3 years getting it prepped. I've heard that it was an old factory. I'd heard Junior Achievement was in that building at one point, but really not set up to be a shelter. And so they take that full 2.5, 3 years to get the building to where it needs to be today. Harmony House separates from the long acronym in 2007, and then in 2022 rebrands to Wayfinders Ohio. Now, that being said, there is some opportunity there, I think, for brand awareness. I think a lot of folks in the community still know it as Harmony House. Our building, our sign out front still says Harmony House. I've been there for a full 10 months, and I still occasionally call it Harmony House at times. So I've had conversation with the board as to whether or not we want to look to maybe revert back to the name Harmony House or keep it as is. I think with this capital campaign and some of the publicity, I think the Wayfinders name is starting to get out. So we may just keep it Wayfinders. But again, we've got some homework to do there on better rebranding. So today we are serving over 600 individuals. I have not seen the numbers yet for 2024, but I would not be surprised if they're into the 700s. We can serve 58 in any one given day. Again, it's 2 floors. The women, children, family are on the top floor. Men are on the bottom floor. We have 7 full baths, 2 full-size kitchens, 2 pantries, a few storage areas. Again, the space has served the clients well, but I think we're starting to outgrow that. We also do some rental assistance, which I'll explain here in a few slides. We do it all with 12 individuals. So there's myself. We have an assistant director, Andy Crowell. He's a licensed social worker by trade. We have a full-time housing coordinator who does nothing but housing, and I'll explain that here in a bit what that is. We have a case manager on each floor, so one for the men, one for the women, children, families, and then shelter aides offset the 24/7 staff coverage. Some numbers throughout the year, you can see there in 2019, it was into the 500s. Like everything else, COVID kind of threw those numbers for a loop, and then it's back on the rise. Now at the bottom here, I've added the 6 months versus 12 months. I've had conversations with the board, and one of the things that I was a bit surprised with was the number of individuals who would return to shelter. So the previous rules would state that you would have to wait 6 months before you're eligible to return. And I meet with the case managers every Friday, and I would start to ask, hey, who's been here before? Who's been here before? And some of these individuals would be there 6, 7, 8, even 9 times. And so we made the ultimate decision that based on the numbers that we're seeing and the amount of individuals that we have to turn away, we want to make sure that everybody gets a fair shot at our program. And so starting in 2025, those individuals will have to now wait 12 months to be eligible to return. And I'll explain why we're going to do that. So how it works, again, individuals come to us from everywhere. We have an individual now that came to us from Zanesville over the weekend. We've seen folks from out of state. We've had some individuals from Connecticut. We had a young lady and her daughter a few months ago that were living in the back of a U-Haul in Alabama that came to us. So really just kind of coming from everywhere. Even within the county, we see folks come to us from the hospitals, right off the streets, Catalyst, whatever it may be. We'll do our best to try to help them find alternate options. We really want the shelter to kind of be the last option. For a lot of folks, it is kind of the last option. But again, we'll do our best to reach out to say, hey, is there anybody else that you might be able to stay with? Mom, grandma, ex, whatever it may be. And if not, then we certainly welcome them into shelter. The first thing that we'll do is review the house rules with them, and I'll show you the next slide, some examples of that. We'll give them the items that they need up front and then obviously tour them around the facility, really just trying to get them acclimated to our program and who we are and the opportunities that might be available to them. One of the things that we do during the intake, which I've got a packet here if anybody would like to see it, is we explain our house rules. We have 27 house rules. Many of them are, I think, kind of self-explanatory, but we do want individuals to be aware of these. Some examples. They agree to background checks. We really welcome about everybody other than those that have arson charges or sexually related offenses. No alcohol or illegal substances. That does include marijuana. Illegal substances will typically result in immediate exit. So if we find paraphernalia or the substance themselves, it's usually a kind of a black and white. Unfortunately, this isn't the place for you. We'll even do our best to get them into some sort of treatment center at that point. But in terms of them staying in shelter,
So Miles, how does that work? I had some people ask me that too. So let's say you find an individual who's violating your policy and they're no longer welcome to stay. Can you kind of walk us through what does that mean in sense of, I get it, they perfect sense, the rules make sense. It's not on Wayfinders. But what if that person then has nowhere to, like, he or she has nowhere to go then? So how does that work? Is it just, hey, you're gonna have to exit the building and you have your items and where do they go?
And so typically what we'll do is we'll try to find an inpatient rehab for them. Twofold. One, inpatient because they're probably needing shelter. And two, it kind of incentivizes them to, all right, maybe I really will go get the treatment versus an outpatient. Unfortunately, there's not many inpatient rehab treatment centers here in Mansfield. So we've got a few that we use. Landmark is a big one that we're using now. We had an individual 2 weeks ago that we found paraphernalia. He admitted fault, and rather than just kick him out on the street, it was, hey, if you can stick around here for a few hours, we'll make some phone calls. Landmark came down, picked the gentleman up with his belongings, and off he went.
Where are they from?
There's one up in Akron. I think there's one in Cleveland. I think there's one in Columbus. They're starting to expand. But again, 4 hours later, they came, picked him up and his belongings. Now, where will he go after his 30-day stay? That I can't answer. That individual was from Mansfield, so I'm hoping that they would return back in a better state of mind. But
Is there a mental health assessment on intake?
good question. Not really. The intake packet itself, I think, is somewhat lengthy. Now, this comes directly from Co-Ohio, the Coalition for Housing and Homelessness. It's a somewhat intrusive packet, right? So you have individuals that come in and we sit down with them and say, hey, I'm Miles. Nice to meet you. We've never met before, but please tell me about your lengthy substance abuse history and tell me, it's very intrusive. Not that we have a lot of say in that, but in terms of an actual mental health assessment, there is not. In addition, we do random room searches. So the clients acknowledge that they're aware that we can do those. We typically do those 1 to 2 times a week. We ask the clients help us with a chore every evening. We ask the clients be in by 9 p.m. to assist us with that chore. They have about an hour to complete it. Very basic things, no more than 5 to 10 minutes. It might be mopping a bathroom floor, cleaning up the tables in the dining room, whatever it may be. We assign those weekly. We ask the clients be out Monday through Friday, 10 to 1, applying for jobs and housing. Coming into this, so a little bit about my background. I am not an expert on all things homelessness or homeless shelters. My background is actually in long-term care. And so coming into this, I wanted to make sure that everything that I was being told was kind of legit, or that other shelters were doing the same. And so I even kind of went to a worst case scenario, Anchorage, Alaska, to ask, what is your, I didn't go there, I called it, to ask, what do you do, right? Our clients are supposed to be out between 3 hours in Ohio. That seems a little bit aggressive to me. What do you do? And they said, oh no, we require it every day, Sunday through Sunday, Sunday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And so I thought, all right, if clients are expected to be out 8 hours in Alaska, I don't think our 10 to 1 is an awful ask. So when clients give sometimes they'll throw a fit. You gotta be kidding me. Where am I supposed to go? It's like, well, it could be much, much worse. Again,
You could go to Alaska. right?
so the hope there again is that they're out applying for jobs, that they're
Right.
looking for housing, they're speaking with landlords. We know that that doesn't always happen, but again, that's the intent. No food or drinks in the room. The kitchen's open between 6 and 9. So that was one of the things that initially we changed. Again, we want there to be structure. We want this to be more of a program, but we also realize that this is home for individuals, even though it's temporarily. At home, I don't just say, all right, I'm hungry between 6 and 8, so I'll go eat breakfast. I'm hungry between 12 and 1. There were times, 2-hour slots for lunch, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Well, if I want a sandwich at 4:30, I just want to go get a sandwich at 4:30, right? So again, in trying to make it a little bit more homey, we decided to just open the kitchen between those hours. Clients must remain on the respective floors. Surprisingly, that is not much of an issue. I expected that to be more of a concern. It really is not. The doors do lock at 11:45. So if clients are out, and if they are not back by 11:45, we let them know that we will unfortunately see you at 6 in the morning. That does not happen as well a lot. If there are extenuating circumstances, obviously we'll work with them. If they're in the hospital or whatever it may be, certainly come on back in. Visitors must be approved. Parents must be available for the bus pickup. That's another thing that we changed kind of upfront. My first few weeks, I would see individuals, children that would be dropped off, parents not there to pick them up the bus. Again, in trying to make this more homey, not that I'm home frequently for my kids to get off the bus, but if I were, I would expect that I would be up there ready to pick them up. And then the other thing that we've changed is the 40-day exit. So the state, the Ohio Department of Development wants to see stays of no more than 30 to 40 days. And so if a client comes into us, we're giving them their 40-day exit up front. Mostly because we want to kind of give them just that a little bit additional pressure that, this is a 40-day program. We need to kind of get moving on these things. And within that 40-day program, there's now structure, right? So we have expectation that you'll have a job with the first 14 days. We expect that you'll have communication with landlords in day 21. And so again, there's goals that they now have to hit along.
How much do you track, what you would say a success rate in terms of when a person stays? What's the percentage of people that actually secure a job or a more permanent place to live?
I can't answer for the job, but for housing last year, we secured, the success rate was 36.9%. So 37% of our individuals that came through were able to successfully find housing and stay in housing up to 3 months.
If you had to ballpark employment, what would you put it at? Just ballpark, you don't need to be bullseye.
The number of individuals that find employment, I would say, is pretty high. The number of individuals that maintain employment, unfortunately, is much lower.
Okay.
75% find employment. 40% might maintain that job.
Less than half.
So again, we're giving them that additional 40 days, just to give them a little bit of additional pressure. Now, we tell clients, if you're doing what you need to, and 40 days comes and goes, we'll work with you, right? We have clients that are there right now that have been there for 70, 80 days. But again, those individuals are working the program. They're meeting with their case managers. They're providing us weekly tracking sheets. We almost want to extend that 40 days because at least we know that they're heading in the right direction. Really, the case managers kind of drive the program. Again, they're the mentors, they're the guides, the advocates. They're meeting with the clients weekly. Some clients we meet with twice a week just to keep them on the right track. We do a weekly house meeting every Wednesday morning where we meet with all clients. It's an opportunity for us to kind of tell them what we're seeing, and then more importantly, kind of hear from them on, hey, what's working, what isn't. You might implement a policy that from our perspective works really well, but we don't live there. So they might say, hey, can we discuss ABC? And then we'll try to kind of work with them. Next slide, please. Again, they're assisting with medical needs, mental health, addiction treatments, helping them find jobs. The medical needs I added there increasing. We're starting to see this over the last few months. Individuals that are probably borderline appropriate to even be in shelter, individuals that for whatever reason need additional assistance. And so, our assistant director, his background is also long-term care. He worked for the area agency prior to. So we've reached out to the area agency numerous times during the last few weeks to say, hey, can we schedule an assessment for Medicaid waiver? Can we schedule a nursing home assessment, whatever it may be? Again, it's not that we don't want to assist these individuals, but some of these individuals are needing help with, activities of daily living that we just really don't have the staff to provide. So again, addiction treatment, we reach out when appropriate. We work with Brightview, Healing Hearts, you name it. If they have availability, we'll certainly reach out to them. And then again, job placement is a big one. So again, I mentioned we have a housing manager whose only job or only duty is assisting clients with housing. He is searching for available rental units. He will actually inspect the units if and when we find something. He'll sit down with the individual to make sure that they understand how the lease works. And then there's some financial assistance from us as well. So we get some grant funding through GLCAP, Great Lakes Community Action Partners, as well as the Richland County Foundation. What we'll typically do is we'll help them with first month's rent security deposit in full, and then we'll taper our assistance down from there. So we don't want to just get them in the first month and pull the rug out, but we do want them to start taking some additional responsibility as they get settled in, right? So you can see there again, it typically will taper down. We are able to help them for up to 6 months through the grant, but typically by after month 4, they're on their own. They're where they need to be.
Do you work with Jobs Ohio?
Not a bunch, but certainly something we could look into. Staffing agencies are big. That's probably our biggest referral source for employment. But a lot of those staffing agencies kind of have no nonsense policies, and sometimes our clients aren't willing and ready to accept that. You know, a 7 a.m. start time does not mean a 7:10 start time. It meant a 7 a.m. start time. So
You might want to talk to our JFS.
okay,
Yeah.
that'd be great. So the future. So initially, I was brought on in February. In March and April, we started to really hit this pretty hard. We looked at 2 properties, one being 661 in possession of the land bank, the other was 780 Park Avenue West. We signed an agreement with Field 9 and his team to help us kind of figure out which would be the better of the 2 locations, all things considered. Pros and cons to both locations, but ultimately it was decided that 661 would be the better fit for what we're looking for. When I initially toured it, so the building itself is 5 to 6 different doctor's offices. I had seen those as pods, and that was kind of Matthew's suggestion as well, where each pod might serve a specific group of individuals, right? So in one pod, it might be men. In one pod, it might be families. It could be women, whatever it may be. Where that's beneficial is because, again, we only have 2 floors today. And so our women, children, family floor, you unfortunately could have, and this happens frequently, you could have a case where you might have a mother with 2 small children. And since each room has 4 beds, that 4th bed could be with somebody who is actively going through addiction. And certainly we don't want the children to see that. So we'll do our best when appropriate to separate those individuals. But again, we just don't have a lot of space to do that. 12,500 square feet, which is a good 50% more than what we currently have. And then the cost to renovate there, and I'll explain that here in a bit. So again, I told you we can serve 58 today. Initially, we'd be looking at serving 75 upon move-in with a max of up to 90. The other thing that we kind of wrote into our wish list was a multi-purpose warming center. So we know that there are agencies and entities that are already doing a warming or cooling centers, but finding that both of those agencies are having difficulties in staffing those. Well, again, we already have 24/7 staff, so it only makes sense that we offer that back. It is very close to Catholic Charities and Community Action. It would allow space for a computer or learning lab or a training room. So again, the expectation would be that if you're not out between 10 and 1 looking for jobs and speaking with landlords like we hope you would be, that's fine, but you better be in one of those classes. And if we've got the space to offer classes, that's exactly what we're going to do. Some of those classes could be financial planning, help with meal prep, whatever it may be. So the benefits, again, obviously, one of the biggest benefits to 661 over 780 is the room to add on if needed. We don't foresee doing that anytime soon, but again, the space is there if at some point there is a need. It is on the bus route. It is right next to the sheriff's office. So in having conversations with Amy at the land bank, I think there's been maybe some gentleman's agreement that we don't really need the parking space in its entirety today, but they do. And so we might allow them to park some of their vehicles there. Win-win, certainly might deter some individuals from doing things that they would otherwise try to do. No immediate changes to staffing required. So in terms of looking at expenses, there's really not going to be a ton of change. Staff offices, privacy for clients, that's a big issue for us. We do our best, but not every individual, not every employee has their own office. So for instance, if you walk into Wayfinders right now, the first face you see is our housing manager. And again, inappropriate, we'll try to find a space that he can have conversations with individuals, but typically it's right there in the front lobby. Increased dignity for clients. So again, our males, it's one open room. And as I mentioned, the upstairs, there's 4 individuals to a room that's about 120 square feet. And then finally, an employee break room. I've mentioned this in previous presentations, but it is a very emotionally draining job, especially for the case managers, and them having a space to just get away even for 30 minutes to eat lunch, drink a cup of coffee, whatever it may be, I think would be hugely beneficial.
Miles, you're saying right now, the men share one big open room?
Correct.
That would not be.
Correct. Yep. So imagine a room about the width here, but probably 4 to 5 times in length. And so there's just 11 sets of bunk beds just in one big open room. So there's really no privacy. The men get 2 dresser drawers at the end of their bed. It works, but I think we can do better. So the details on the new building. The building overall is in pretty good condition. The architects, especially the structural engineers, have made note that there's an elevated walkway if you're looking at the front of the building that probably will need to be just totally replaced. We did see some mold issues in the building. So if and when we take possession of the building, we'll start working on that. We do know that there's a sprinkler system that needs to be installed, but we knew that coming in. The water main from the street is not appropriate, I guess, to service that sprinkler system. So there would need to be a larger water main coming from the street. But everything else is looking fairly good for a building that's been sitting empty for a few years. 6 gas furnaces, 2 of them need to be replaced. All the outdoor condensing units will also need to be replaced. The gas and electrical, again, for what we're looking for residential is really where it needs to be. In terms of timelines, we'd be looking at bidding first, second quarter of 2025. The architect and his team are looking at 12 to 16 months for renovation. And so we would definitely be in by the end of 2026, barring any unusual issues. There's a cost breakdown here. I've also included in your packet a copy of Matthew's more detailed some of these issues as well for you guys to look at your leisure. These are the overall costs, again, 2.1 to 2.6, kind of where we need to be project. And so some potential partners. So again, I'm sure that you guys are tired of hearing me and seeing my face in the paper occasionally, but we have, I think, made some nice gains on this project. So we have the $250,000 from the budget that's been committed to us. The council, through their generosity, back in November, voted to approve the $500,000 of ARPA funds. The Mill Iron Foundation has also approved our request of $500,000. In having conversations with the land bank, if all goes well, at their board meeting in January, they will look to vote to sell us the purchase of that building for $35,000. I hope I'm not letting the cat out of the bag there, but again, that's to be determined. I've had many conversations with the Richland County Foundation as well. The ask there will also be $500,000. That will come in the form of a $300,000 competitive grant that I'll be writing in January, and 2 donor advised funds at $100,000 each. And then I'm here asking the county to consider a ask of $500,000 as well.
If I'm looking at the math, so the city, you had 2 other governmental levels contribute, the city at 500, the state at 250. I'm looking at the math, you have a 500 ask from us, 500 in a combination of grant, donor advised funds. That would be $1 million. I still show roughly you're gonna need about $350,000.
So if all goes as well, we should be, if these all work out as one would hope, I would be at 2.25 on the 2.5 ask total.
It's about 350.
Yep, 250.
Do you know where you would get that last lot of money?
Yep. So I've not had conversations, but I've heard frequently that a certain individual is interested in purchasing the property. And then I've had conversation with Park National as well. Fortunately, we've got a little bit of money in investments, and they would allow us to borrow up to a percentage of that investment. That alone would cover that last 250.
Excluding any purchase price of the building.
Exactly.
When do you plan on speaking to that individual about a potential purchase price?
Probably following the land bank's decision in January to officially sell that property to us.
Is that when you would like us to commit? You looking,
I think that would be dependent on really you guys. Again, we would start, so with the ARPA dollars and the state capital budgets, we've got to go through competitive bidding, prevailing wage, all that good stuff.
Ours would not be ARPA dollars, just,
Okay. The ARPA contingencies are,
we have an ability, and that's why if you saw some communication, we have an ability to provide funding to the land bank, but we needed an answer from the land bank's council, Cliff and I sit on land bank, but we're commissioners today, that the land bank could contribute money to the project, and we got an answer yes back from their council. So that would be what would be the proper and legal ways, should we approve it, to assist with this project, would be a contribution to the land bank, who would then, again, board approval, which I imagine it would, then turn around and approve that same amount of money to the project.
okay.
That's the way to do it here. And it is beneficial that it is an ARPA. So we're
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
On the two columns of numbers you have, the 2,094, 2.6, this is the range, so minimum to maximum of
Exactly.
architecture plumbing. You think it'll be this? So it looks like plumbing is pretty well set, right? 258, 250. So this is for renovations of that property.
Exactly. Yep. This is a min-max range. Me being no expert by any means. Now, fortunately for us, one of our board members owns BP Electric. And so I think the electrical figures we can probably work with a little bit. The fire suppression, I would not be surprised if it comes back a little bit higher than their estimate at 120. And I'm only basing that on the fact in a previous life, again, in nursing homes, we had looked at a renovation to a sprinkler system that was of similar size building, and the cost was substantially higher. So I would not be surprised if that 120 ends up being closer to 200. But other than that, I think those numbers are fairly accurate with where this project could end up.
The fire suppression costs include the cost of a larger main. You said the current, like lateral that comes in, or the main isn't sufficient for water suppression.
I don't know if they've roped those costs into the fire suppression or if that's in the plumbing. That I don't.
But it's in there
It's
somewhere.
in there. Yep. Yep.
So Miles, you and I had a conversation some time ago, when two sites were being considered, Park Avenue West and this one here. And at the time, I said, well, what is your real preference? And you had mentioned the one on Park Avenue West. If money was not an issue, you like that one better. Was that for capacity reasons?
It's a great question. Yes, capacity's one. More centralized location was another reason I like that space. At the end of the day, I think financially, it was just going to be way more. So if you look in your packet here and Matthew,
I saw the cost was about 500 to 600,000 more with an additional, that doesn't include 600,000 in that,
exactly.
$2 million more.
Exactly. So we're looking at 2.5. That could have been upwards of 3.6, 3.7. The other issue there, and I mean, no disrespect to the contractors that are working on that building, but some of the engineers had some concerns regarding whether or not some of the updates in that building might have been to code, specifically for what we're looking for, right, for shelter. So there could have been some additional costs there as well, and trying to get into a residential, because prior to it was the old area agency and just set up, different.
prior to that,
Votes.
handball court.
Okay.
Daryl's a handball champion.
I played there.
I had looked at was the September version. Do you know what changes were made in the revised?
Some grammatical.
Version? Grammatical.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That answers.
Can't believe it.
Now, this report just shows 661. It does not show the details on 780. If anybody would like to see that half of the report of 780, be more than
Yeah,
happy.
I've seen it. So.
Okay. Great location. Nothing against 780. I mean, just
You and I've talked off. I prefer this location for several reasons, but
again, pros and cons to each.
Yeah, there's trade-offs.
Yep. Yep.
you're right, it's more centrally located, but there's some other things that come into play with location.
Once we had found that there was the accessibility to the bus on 661, I felt much better about the centralized location versus offsite.
That's 7 days a week.
7 days a week, 7 to 5. The only advantage to the other one, I think, was an extra bus stop at 5:30. So almost a wash, but
Is there a contingency plan, Miles, in the event that that bus schedule were to change with federal funding concerns?
But that same thing would come into play for the other location, should they move.
Back to your-
Walkability would be more available at the other location.
It would.
it would. Back to your point on the bus, I think it's actually Monday through Friday. I don't believe it's 7 days a week. In terms of contingency plans, so we do have some grant funding for different transportation options through Goodwill. Most of those unfortunately are related to bus passes and bus tickets. We do have a vehicle currently. If something were to happen like that, we may look at an additional purchase of a vehicle just to try to get folks back and forth. But it's a great question.
I don't know if you had a question.
Carl,
What have you heard most recently from the foundation about the $500,000 ask? Was that being promising if you had to, say, pretty sure we're gonna get you.
Well, what's the percent on pretty sure versus really? I feel pretty good. So I've had conversations again with Ally. Sierra, who is kind of helping oversee the project, was on maternity leave and just returned. So kind of catching her up to speed on ask in the project. I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good.
Donation or participation. How is that gonna work for the city between? Contract things have to be signed by the end of the year. Obviously, you won't have this under contract. How's that work?
So as I understand the subaward from the city, I don't believe that the contractors have to be approved. The money just really has to be allocated. So the subaward letter will show that the money is being allocated towards the project. Biggest hindrance with the ARPA dollars is that the project has to be completed by 2026 in its entirety. Which again, we think with the timeline that we.
From a land bank standpoint, members of the county commissioners who are on the land bank, how would that work if you were going to, Board of Commissioners, say you vote to move $500,000 to the land bank for transfer? What happens with the $35,000 purchase that Wayfinders would be making of the property? Is that just off?
No, so let's answer this. I would like, again, I'm one of three. I think because ARPA is involved, it would be beneficial, presuming we would approve it. So I'm in favor of it wholeheartedly. Miles has done great work. It makes sense for many reasons. We also need to take care of those who would be a quality of life improvement for individuals at Harmony House, which I think is very important. It also works in partnership with the city because it is ARPA. There needs to be some time sensitivity to it. So how I would envision it, presuming it's approved, would be we would give an approval, right? And then it would go to the land bank that would need to approve the sale price. I would imagine that 35,000 is not a substantial, not in terms of the scope of the project. I'm not minimizing $35,000. That sale price would come back to the land bank, and then we would approve again the formal transfer of the dollars to the land bank if and when the land bank approved the sale. That's sort of how I figure this incrementally. But I do think it's important because ARPA is involved for the city. They're going to need to know if there's other partnerships. Because if we were to say no today, then they probably are going to have to rescind their $500,000 because Wayfinders may not have their approval and the city might have concerns that they would lose $500,000. That would be my thoughts on it.
And the way that Matthew and I have addressed any contingencies with funding or lack of funding is just to essentially break up the pods into projects, right? And so it might be one of those where, again, if there are 6 pods funding dependent, maybe we get to 4 of the 6 pods, right? And then in another year or two, we come back to this fundraising effort again, and then we finish up those last 2. So even 4 of the 6 finished pods is still leaps and bounds better than where we're at today.
And if the commission proceed with this, I assume this comes from capital funds, or where would that money?
It would ultimately be capital. We looked at end of year dollars. It would be capital, but it would come out of our excess revenues from this year.
What I have.
Miles, it might be worthwhile, it's totally up to you, but it might be worthwhile to get a prevailing wage determination from Iowa Department of Commerce or through legal counsel. You know, the event you may not have to pay prevailing wages. I mean, if Wayfinders takes ownership in the entirety of that piece of property by construction, there is possibility. It'd be worth looking into that question.
Even with city ARPA dollars, Andrew? Even with city ARPA dollars?
It's not a bright line rule where
Right.
prevailing wages are automatically required with ARPA. So I don't know. I'm just saying it's a question worth asking. It might realize some savings for you.
I appreciate that. And we've had, it's funny you mentioned that because again, I've talked to different people that have said prevailing wage is absolutely required and others have said, I don't think so. So that makes sense, but I'll look into.
I know, just another question. Isn't that helpful? There's an answer out there.
It could be very helpful. So thank you.
Miles, if this all falls together, I'd suggest big thank you to Samaritan Hospital Foundation and University Hospitals,
Absolutely.
because they're the ones that donated the building.
Yeah. Are we comfortable at least doing the first level approvals today? I think it would help them. You're the chair, so
If I hear a motion, I'll probably vote.
this time I'll make a motion to give the go-ahead to Wayfinders to move forward with their move to 661 Park Avenue East with a $500,000 contribution from the Richland County Commissioners and or General Fund.
I'll make an enthusiastic second.
Commissioner Banks,
Yes.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears.
Yes.
So Miles, all I think this would go then would be then the next step. Obviously, you need to hear from the foundation. But then I would say you start the conversations with the land bank. Again, it's a little odd. I'm talking as a commissioner today, knowing Cliff and I are on the land bank. I would imagine it's going to be approved, but we're only 2.
Sure.
Here we're 2 of 3, then we're not the majority. Then I would start the conversation on the sale of the building,
Yep.
the land bank.
Absolutely. I think Amy's plan is that it goes to vote at the land bank's meeting in January.
Okay.
And
Good. Yeah, because you got to get moving because the city it needs to be done by 2026.
if the architect actually has keys to the building as we speak, and he might even be there right now, getting measurements and whatever need be. So
I've been through that building. I think it's
It's
structurally, I mean, the way it's laid out,
I've been in that building.
it's very solid.
great deal.
That was the sense I got. Going through it, yeah. I've been in the other one, but I played racquetball there.
Well, your dreams of buying it yourself and opening
Yeah, I
up
can
tennis
still do
courts and
that.
racquetball still exist.
I think tennis courts are going away. Got to do something.
Pickleball, right?
There, oh, he loves pickleball. Talk to him about
That's the dark side.
it.
All right. Well, Miles, thank you for coming over and a very well put together presentation.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Nice job, Miles.
Thank you all.
You're standing out there.
Sheriff's out there.
Yeah.
Andrew, would you bring in the sheriff?
You bring him in, then bringing me in.
There you go. Morning.
What's up?
Hey, guys.
What you doing, fellas?
How you doing?
Captain Blunt.
You don't have your watch on, did you?
No. Had on for a couple days. I was in pretty good health.
You check the readout here.
Yeah, at least my pulse and my oxygen level.
No, we are still in session, so we'll move forward with, we've been joined by the Captain Blanc and the sheriff and his contingent. Captain Blanc, talk to us about what we want to get done.
All right. So, earlier in the summer, we had, Sheriff's Office Command Staff, we got together and we were, really tossing the idea around of getting a comprehensive audit, or assessment of, jail services, to include, intakes, medical practices. So after reviewing it and kind of looking for a team to do that, we found that LLRMI, which is Legal and Liability Risk Management Institute, we'd like them to come in and do a pretty comprehensive jail audit, and go over everything medical wise, our jail policies and procedures, use of force, searches, anything with risk that we do in a jail. We want them to come review our practices, our procedures, and to give their input. And LLRMI has been around for about 16 years. They go into jails all over the state of Ohio. They're actually in connection with our County Risk Sharing Authority, or CORSA. And we'd like to bring that team in and do a pretty comprehensive audit. And what they will do is they will review all of our policies, our procedures. They will interview inmates, officers, supervisors, administrators, and they will develop a comprehensive report on what they find. LLRMI is a company that uses or writes policies using the Ohio Minimum Jail Standards, Ohio legislative mandates. They use decisions from the Sixth Circuit, District Supreme Court decisions, and the Court of Appeals. And they use that in conjunction with the American Jail Association and the Department of Justice to develop these policies that are best practices for jails. So that's what we want to do. We want to bring them in and come alongside them and to in an attempt really to be the best that we can be for this community. That's what we'd like to do.
Motion to approve.
Money coming from?
Well, that's something that we have talked with Daryl. I'm not sure exactly where I think it's
I would imagine there's either money contingency or in the insurance line item of the jail. I mean, we have money, I would say, from the general fund where it remains to be determined. So I'll make a motion to approve.
We accounted for it in the budget and our contingency line item because we weren't sure how much it was gonna be.
Okay.
So we put a range.
Need to be done. Second.
Commissioner Banks,
Yes.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.
What's the cost?
28,000.
And I'm sorry, what was the initials of this company again?
Yes, it's LLRMI, stands for Legal and Liability Risk Management Institute.
They based out of?
You would ask me that.
Oh, I mean,
I should know the answer to that. Indiana.
Happens to be a big football game in Indiana Friday night too.
Plainfield, Indiana.
The Hoosiers.
Yeah, there's a huge football game in there Friday night.
what is the last, have you, with this particular open, has there been this kind of an audit?
So yearly, we do a state audit. We just completed our state audit last week. But nothing outside of a state audit that we have completed to my knowledge. Like 2016,
You're just a kid when you started.
I was.
This is not a financial audit, it's more of a formal audit. Like, that works.
It is best practices, policies and procedures. Correct. Performance.
But it's not, I guess.
Maybe about a week to 2 weeks, but then after they do their audit, they have they will consult. There'll be a consulting period where they can consult with implementation of what they find, maybe some different practices, procedures on how we do things. It's really going to focus on the intake. They're going to be on all three shifts, but just the intake of inmates and then those inmates with medical considerations is really the focus of this audit. So I would say as soon as the agreement's signed, I'm going to get them in as soon as we can get them in.
I know, you guys have talked for the last couple of years about trying to enhance medical care. Right. I think the last time you talked about trying to get a grant, where does that stand now in terms of that? Your Honor, medical service?
Yeah, so good question. So we did apply for a grant through One Ohio. I have not heard anything back from that grant. It doesn't look like it's going to, I'm not sure, I guess. I don't want to rush to judgment. But this week, actually, at the end of last week, it's a new grant with about 60 million. What was the name? Who was that through?
Attorney General's office.
Through the Attorney General's office, that is really strictly for jails and MAP programs. So we applied for that grant. We submitted for it on Friday, and hopefully we will get some funding for the MAP program, medication assisted treatment program.
And I guess my thinking is when you get this audit done, one of their findings, if one of their findings is you need enhanced medical at the beginning when folks are coming in, you guys know that already. It's just a matter of trying to figure out a way to fund it, right?
Correct. If that's one of their findings,
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
I mean, as part of this, looking back, when you look back at 2024, I think there were two jail deaths that were possibly drug related, folks that died in the jail. Is that part of what drives this kind of request for an audit?
I'm always looking to get better at what we do. Medical issues have, arose, and yes, I will strive to get the best services that we can at the jail.
Gentlemen, we appreciate you coming in and look forward to seeing what they come up with and implementing what they come up with.
Hey, bud.
Good job, Cappy.
Hey, Cap.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. It is 10:18 and we will have recess until 10:30 when we will be meeting with Central Services.
Do you want to finish, just wrap up the other?
Yes, let's do the other until we do that. So can we get a certify the record of proceedings for December the 12th?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Banks,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Mears.
Yes.
Okay. And can we approve the disciplinary action for Dayspring employee?
Now, this motion needs to be a 1-day suspension for a 4th tardy violation, a 3-day suspension for a 5th tardy violation, a 5-day suspension for a 6th tardy violation. That would be a total of a 9-day suspension for an employee at Dayspring.
Second.
Commissioner Banks,
Yes.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears.
Yes.
And can we accept a quote from J&B Acoustical for a 5,000 and
An aluminum door. What?
It's the east door of our building.
Glad you said that. I don't see where it indicates where.
Yeah, it's our door, our employee entrance door on the east side,
Down here.
at the-
towards the jail.
on the jail side. There's
Yeah.
an accident, glass was broken, so. Replaced.
Includes the glass and the whole.
Motion.
Second.
That's a plywood. Banks.
Yes.
Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears.
Yes.
Okay, it is still 10:19. And I would, we'll take a recess until 10:30 and then come back with Central Services. I'm gonna tell him. Okay, never mind. Hey, it's 10:30. We are back in session. And have we been joined by Rachel? Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right. Have you got some good news for us there, Rachel?
I do have great news. We will start with the best news, which is the copy paper pricing for 1 year. We actually will be decreasing by 5.37%. The market seems to be a little more stable than it was a year ago. It was a little crazy at that point in time. But I asked for quotes from Ritter's. Well, I received quotes from Ritter's and Friends. And Friends did come in at a lower rate. Our most used copy paper is the 8.5 by 11. So that came in actually at a pretty good rate at $36.49 a carton, and Ritter's had bid 37.49. So yay us. I'm really happy about that it did decrease by the 5.37 over the last year.
Now, Rachel, this is just for color copy paper, correct?
This is
Really
for all.
white.
This is
Yeah.
all of our copy paper. So this is what we use in the copy machine, the white, the 8.5 by 11. We also purchase 8.5 by 14 and the 11 by 17. But some departments do use the color paper for different projects or for different mailings and stuff as well.
This is just a quote, meaning we'll have to do this again towards the end of next year, correct?
Yes.
It's an annual.
Annual
Okay.
fun.
Yes. So this will be from January 1st through December 31st of 2025.
I get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
Commissioner Banks?
Yes.
Commissioner Vero?
yes.
Commissioner Mears?
Yes.
Okay, the
Okay.
next bit of news is Friendly Wholesale agreed to renew our janitorial products. This is the second renewal. We do have a total of 3 renewals, and there will be no increase. So what we paid last year is what we will pay this coming year.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Commissioner Banks?
Yes.
Commissioner Vero?
yes.
Commissioner Mears?
Yes.
Hey. Anybody have anything else? Rachel, thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Hope you're feeling better.
Thank you. I'm on the mend. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas to all of you.
Merry Christmas, Rachel.
Thank
Yes.
you.
10:33 and the Richland County Board of Commissioners are adjourned.